Peace and blessings, everyone. Maurice here with Brother Gaitan. We're going to focus on a few key issues today. Top of the list is the international pressure that's being placed on Paul Kagame and the Rwandan government, as we see more states, Canada joining the US and UK, holding Rwanda to account for its war of aggression, war of plunder, its occupation of the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Kivus, North and South Kivu. And Gaitan, this is what we often share with folks is that the barrier or the barrier or the threshold for applying pressure on the Rwandan is not that high. It's definitely not at the level that we see with Israel, for its genocidal war against the Palestinians. In 2012, when Rwanda, along with its M23, captured the city of Goma, we saw the formula. It's like we know the formula, we know what works in that pressure from Rwanda's allies, because Rwanda doesn't function by itself. It can't. It's a landlocked country, a small landlocked country, population of 15 million people or so in East Africa. So in order for it to wage its wars, its massive propaganda campaign, has to do it with the backing of Western powers. Rwanda is the way it is today, in large part because of the support that it gets from the West. So when it goes into a neighboring country and commits war crimes against humanity, the United Nations even said genocide, then the key for us is to put pressure on its backers, right? It's not like we're running to the West for support. It's like, hey, you're sponsoring this guy. And if you didn't sponsor Kagame and Museveni too, they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing in the Congo, right? That's really important for people to understand. Kagame is doing what he's doing in the Congo, or able to do what he's doing in the Congo, because of the backing that he gets, right? He invades and occupies Congo, and the European Union rewards him with a critical minerals deal, right? Minerals that, for the most part, he's getting from the Congo, right? His soldiers, to the tune of 4,000, according to the latest Security Council or UN Group of Experts report. Western intelligence services say they may be even up to 7,000. And while he has that, he's breaking international law by invading a sovereign country. Then you see the European Union give him 20 million euros in 2023, 20 million euros again in 2024. So he's being rewarded for his war of aggression and plunder against the Congolese people. So what we say as activists and sensible people around the world, stop rewarding this guy. You know what I'm saying? It's not a very complicated formula, right? So some of them, and now, interestingly enough, and I was saying, stop rewarding this guy, right? They too say, they're the ones who are saying what he's doing in the Congo, right? The G7 says Rwandan soldiers are in the Congo and Rwanda should withdraw immediately. The UN Security Council, 15-0 unanimous decision in Resolution 2773 says that Rwanda should immediately withdraw its soldiers from Congo. So there's no dispute among global powers, United
Mhm.
States, United Kingdom, Russia, China, France, you name it, European Union, no dispute, UK, about what is happening, right? There just isn't any dispute. Where the issue is, because he's their guy, Kagame, they call him a friendly tyrant, he's their guy, they are reluctant to stop rewarding him. He's delivering a critical minerals deal for the European Union. He is delivering mercenaries for Total Energies in Mozambique. So they are not as keen to stop rewarding him because he's at service to them, right? He's serving as an outpost for the, uh, the offloading of those who are seeking asylum in the UK, right? And
Yeah.
so it's critical that people understand this, that he's, for all intents and purposes, an agent of neocolonialism, right? And uh, as an agent for neocolonialism, he's rewarded, right? And when he commits crimes in the Congo, like war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide, right? They run interference. That is the UK, the European Union, the United States, so that he's not held to account. They run political and diplomatic interference. So what we're saying is stop. Like the whole world is saying that at what price? How many millions of Congolese lives, right, have to be taken in order for you to stop, you, the United States, you, the United Kingdom, you, the European Union, you, France, to stop rewarding, stop protecting your agent. So we're basically calling on these nations to reel in their agent. And that's what President Obama did in 2012 when he withheld aid from the Rwandan government. And then you saw European nations follow suit. Now, interestingly enough, one can argue that the United States has led again in terms of holding its agent to account when it sanctioned James Kabarebe, right? James Kabarebe was sanctioned, which is the only, and you can balance me, the only other person above Kabarebe that could be sanctioned would be Paul Kagame himself,
Yeah.
right? Like he's the guy, like he's been there. We have a film on our website, and I highly recommend, on our YouTube channel, and I highly recommend that you watch it. In French, it's called L'Afrique en morceaux. It's a film that was produced by this remarkable Egyptian filmmaker, Jihan El Tari, and we transcribed it from French to English so that it'll be accessible to the English world. We posted it on our YouTube channel, and in there you have Kabarebe basically telling you, how he orchestrated, Kagame, Museveni. Actually, Museveni was in there, Kagame was in there, in their own words, telling you what they uh, doing in the Congo, how they brought Congolese together to serve as the political front for their military operations. And that blueprint remains intact to this very day. Back then, it was Laurent Kabila and a number of
Mhm.
other folks, right? Today, it's, Makenga, and it's Kone Nga, a former president of the Electoral Commission, who's now a militia leader. So, and he can do that because he doesn't have to have a military. The Rwandan military is what's behind. So, just wanted to lay that out. That what we're seeing, this increasing pressure, is you know is the formula that works. We know in 2012 that it's not a high threshold to put pressure on Rwanda and really ultimately get them to do what the UN Resolution 2773 says, to immediately withdraw their soldiers from Congolese territory and cease their operations, command, control of, and support of the M23.
Yeah. Greeting, Brother Maurice. It's always glad to have this conversation with you. I think it's kind of interesting that you mentioned Israel and how the dynamic is different when it comes to holding Rwanda accountable. I would even go ahead and argue that the tactic that we have seen uh, that Rwanda has been doing, they are literally copying Israel in terms of weaponizing genocide and using an armed militia to justify why they are constantly violating international law by pouring into Congolese territory, right? Like you mentioned, 4,000 boots on the ground from Rwanda, as per the UN report, and also 7,000 that was recently shared by the Guardian. And it was shared on by Michaela Wong. I think I read it yesterday that there was even that fear, right, that the M23 or Rwanda, they are even going ahead and burning documents that can prove that the Congolese people, the indigenous, own the land, right? That they are the owner of lands and houses over there because they fled. Let's not forget that we talking about 7.1 million people who have been displaced by the war. So when the M23 finally took Goma and Bukavu, they have been, particularly around Goma, they have been asking those same uh, internally displaced people. They were forcing them to return home, and it was shared or by Actualité CD, which is a really big Congolese media outlet. Uh, that 70% of the people who returned were complaining that they found in their homes that they found other people, in their lands, that those lands were taken away from them, right?
Mhm.
So it is the same tactic that we see also in the Congo, particularly in the Congo, which is dangerous when we know how the infrastructure are not great in terms of like keeping information. So when you really have a when you have a document that prove that this land is yours, you most likely only have that one document, right? There is actually no other copies because of how, again, the infrastructure and the country set up, and they're going ahead and burning those last evidence of that. So you're gonna have around 7 million people who we won't have a land anymore, right? Like if they used
Mhm.
to have their farms, that will be gone. Other people will be using them. And then that will also create repeatedly that cycle of violence because these people are not gonna just sit there while they have other people living in their homes and the farms.
Mhm.
So I'm actually going to argue when you said that the formula works. I think that the formula that we are currently using, even though is being effective, but it's also, I would say, at the same time ineffective in some way because we have tried that in 2012. We have tried that before in 1997. All these, but as long as we don't use fully that power of holding them accountable, that's just not just applying sanctions, right? But
Mhm.
really going ahead and trialing people who committed war crimes. They need to be in jail. They do not need to be prevented from traveling with visa restrictions. They need to be in jail. James Kabarebe, I'm glad that the United States finally sanctioned him, and with he's unable to essentially use a dollar system, banking with the U.S. System, traveling in the U.S. and other things. But he really needs to be behind bars. Same thing with Kagame. Same thing with everyone that is involved. Even Sultani Makenga, right?
Mhm.
Sultani Makenga, and I shared that recently. In 2012, it was shared in the UN report. I think it's S 2012 dash 831, I believe. The United Nations shared that Sultan Makenga at that time was prior to Bosco Tanganda arrest, it was essentially the number two, and he was responding directly to James Kabarebe, who was at the time the Minister of Defense, right? Almost 11 years later, or 13 years later, the guy is still part of the M23. And right before he left, right before he joined M23, he was part of the Congolese government
Mhm.
and the Congolese army, sorry, the FRDC. And before that, he was part of the CNDP, who's also like Rwanda-backed militia. And prior to the CNDP, he was with RCD, another Rwanda-backed militia, and before
It's
that, it
a
was the AFDL.
rally
We're
for
gonna
Congolese
continue.
democracy.
Yes, rally for Congolese democracy, and so we continue to put pressure. We continue to put to exert sanctions, but they're still gonna come back. Kone Nanga, the former president of the Electoral Commission, he has been under sanction, I believe, since 2018 and 2019 by the US. That didn't stop the guy from traveling, for example, to Belgium, because there was US sanctions. He lived in Belgium for a while, right before joining the AFC Alliance, Congo River Alliance, that is part of the M23. So yes, sanction might prevent Rwanda from continue to fund the M23, but that will not discourage other folks to use violence. You said something very interesting, that how many million, you asked that question, how many million Congolese people need to die before there is actually something that is being done. I'm even going to go ahead and argue, how many people, how many Congolese people needs to die for these for the minerals, for the West, the Rwanda and anybody to take the minerals. In the report that was written by Friends of the Congo and Public Citizen, available online, the deadly cost of the globe of the cobalt. I believe that's a full title. Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You essentially talk about that result, right? Like, because we're talking about this green energy transition that really needs cobalt as a critical minerals. We have seen millions of people died. We have seen millions of Congolese people being displaced. But is it really necessary, right? Like the US is really involved, and that's also the other difference, is really involved in the Congo in terms of that minerals, of that cobalt, and that was ever since its inception, right? Where the US was able to allow King Leopold II to facilitate that plunder is because they knew that they needed the critical minerals at the time. It was rubber and ivory, and now we talk about cobalt, copper, coltan, and all these. That's just to say that Congo is so important that we need to have an eye, keep an eye on the Congo, and we cannot let Paul Kagame of Rwanda just consistently destabilizing the region. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And as you know, there are layers to it, right? Because the we talk about like the three evils that have pervaded over the past 3 decades, right? Rampant impunity, right?
mm,
Lack of accountability, right? Lack of justice, right? Now, the US, UK, European Union holding its ally or its agent accountable certainly can address impunity, right? Uh, there's all, and even possibly accountability. But there's that big question of justice and whose responsibility is it? Uh, you have an African continent, 1.2 billion people, right? Where are the African institutions?
mm,
Are we going to see, Paul Kagame follow the path of a Hissène Habré, for example, where the African Union held him to account for the crimes he committed in Chad? Will the African Union step up and hold uh, Kagame to account, and Museveni, you know, uh, as well, for the crimes that they've committed on a legal level? Right? You just articulated the centrality and importance of Congo to Africa. Well, African youth, Africa is a continent of teenagers. How are they going to step up to hold, an elder like Kagame accountable? Are they going to uh, buy his narrative, fully that he's a Pan-African leader that is resisting the West and a model that ought to be able to that they ought to follow? Are they going to young Africans going to say, hey, when you kill Congolese to the tune of millions, right? When you play a role in that, it's not just a Congolese matter, especially when you take into consideration the centrality of Congo to Africa. If you're keeping Congo destabilized, Congo impoverished, Congo dependent, then that affects us as Africans. Because if Congo is not stabilized, if Congo is not in the hands of the sons and the daughters of Congo, in the spirit of Lumumba, for the benefit of Congo and Africa in general, then as a Nigerian, as an Ivorian, as a Ghanaian, that's working against my interests, right? So there's also accountability on that level from young Africans. Are they going to believe the stories that Kagame is being told? Are they going to believe Kagame's what appear to be hired hands? They come in from Zimbabwe and South Africa, and they present themselves as reporters telling you the truth. When 365 days ago, they said Kagame was trying to build an empire in Eastern Congo at any cost. But today, Kagame is a good guy, So for young Africans, the narrative that you buy into, the stories that you allow to be told, are you going to allow Kagame to come to Ghana, Burkina Faso, wherever, without you protesting? Without you standing up and telling your leaders, no, this guy, he's got the blood of millions of Africans on his hands. So that kind of accountability that you're talking about, justice ought to come from Africans. And that's not something that you got to look to the West for. If you look in the West for justice, you're not going to get justice there. Black folks in the United States been trying to get justice for hundreds of years. It didn't happen, and they're U.S. citizens. So
Yeah.
you're not going to get it from you're not, Congolese is not going to get justice from the West. And a part of that too is organizing in a way that those political leaders, those elites in the Congo, right, are also held to account, because they too have been involved. Many Congolese politicians today were part of RCD-ML, RCD-MK, RCD, right? And they go from RC, Rally for Congolese Democracy, right up into posts. So that's something for young Congolese to organize around, to assure that those elites, those leaders, are also held to account, because there's a combination of this. It's not solely a question of Kagame's military, but 100%. It's also a question of the weakness of the Congolese state, not just in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of vision. I think it was, I don't know if it was 2022 or 2023. I think it was 2023. Young Congolese mobilized in Kinshasa to appeal to their own government to say, hey, Bunagana has been under occupation for over a year, 2022. What are you doing about it? What was the response from the Congolese government? Arrest them, chase them out of the country, brutalize them, torture them, right? So there is that aspect as well. And so right now, the urgency is to provide relief for the folks in Goma, relief for the folks in Bukavu. But make no mistake about it, it's not a holistic prescription, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's an urgent pressure point. And the threshold that we're saying for that is not as high as one may think. And it doesn't just require these governments withholding aid, but also people in the streets putting pressure on the sports team that are cleansing these crimes, right? The National Basketball Association, Arsenal, Saint Germain, World Cycling, all of those entities that move Africa, Global Citizen, John Legend, that provide a cover. John Legend had responded to the pressure that's put on him, and he said something in his response that struck me, Gaitan. He said, I didn't want to punish the Rwandan people because of a leader. And I said to myself, a 150 plus Congolese women were just raped and burnt alive. Is that punishment? What about that punishment? 3,000 Congolese perished by this leader that you're going to, that you say you may not be in agreement with. Is that punishment? What about those Congolese lives that have been punished for 3 decades? And you're concerned about somebody not being entertained as a form of punishment?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like
Yeah.
so struck, right, by that.
And brother Morris, to me, it's like people have their opinion, right, on boycott and how it works. So part of me still wanted to understand his opinion on boycott, right? But then I was like, hold on, didn't he just advocate to boycott Republican states in the US that were for abortion? So to me, it's like when you believe in something, right? Like you at least need to be consistent with your word. Because if you telling me that you do not support boycott ever, and then I would respect that. As a person, I will respectfully disagree with you. And I'll be like, yeah, you're right. It's your right to not be in when it comes to boycotts. But then you cannot go ahead and boycott your own people because he's a US citizen, first and foremost. He cannot be boycotting Republicans or people who have a certain opinion on abortion in the US. He cannot call entire Hollywood to boycott them, but then go in Rwanda and say that he doesn't believe in boycott because he does not want to get affected. So what type of message is he sending? That people in the US are not deserving his music because of their political point or opinion than people in Rwanda. So to me, it was just like striking, right? When you play that video of him saying that he does not want to punish the people of Rwanda, and then you watch a video of him in 2019 talking about literally him welcoming boycotting and saying that boycott works, that money talks. These were his words, right? And talking about the elite, I wanted to know because there was also a question asked regarding the Trump, that the DRC government or President Tshisekedi offered a mineral deal to the U.S. To Trump. So what's your opinion? I think Malakiamen, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, asked that question. Did the DRC recently offer Trump minerals? And also have your opinion on what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the New York Times reported, right? And it's important that people understand that um, this is not necessarily the first time that this kind of overtures occurred under the Tshisekedi administration, right? Remember,
Yeah.
you have this Israeli by the name of Dan Gertler, right, who the United States government sanctioned, right, for corrupt practices in the DRC, according to the U.S. Department of Treasury. They said that Dan Gertler and his companies fleeced the Congolese government for $1.6 billion over a 2-year period, right? And they put him on the sanctions list. Because, when the U.S. put a businessman on the sanctions list, he's got to be like way out there, right?
Yeah.
So put him on the sanctions list. So the Congolese government hired a lobby firm in Washington, D.C., pay them, close to $1 million or so. Mercury is the name of the firm. I think that Jacqueline, the state, the parastatal, engaged this lobby firm. And the part of the charge of the lobby firm is to work with the then Biden administration to lift the sanctions on Dan Gertler. Right? That was a part of the charge, in that
Yeah.
in that they were paying a U.S. lobby firm or lobby firm in the United States to help lift the sanctions against Dan Gertler. So what I'm saying is, like, this is not necessarily new. If you look at the landscape, right, of ownership of concessions in the Congo, you're talking about the government, getting 10%, 15%. It's the in a lot of respects, the country is already sold, right? It's sold to Glencore.
Yeah,
It's sold to China Molybdenum. It's sold to Ivory
China.
Coast. It's sold to ERC, right? It's the the that's why the people are. That's why you have 70 million people living on $2.15 a day, right? Because the elites have sold off the company. And not just this administration, the previous one as well. Kabila had been in there for 18 years. There's a infamous video of Kabila. He's on a boat. I think it was on the Congo River. And he's talking to investors. And he said, come to the Congo, and install yourself like Stanley did, right? That's the Congolese president saying that. He's referencing Henry Morton Stanley. Henry Morton Stanley is the guy who carved out the territory for the Congo on behalf of King Leopold II of Belgium. And here it is, a modern day president saying, come and install yourself like Stanley did. So the elite, what some people call the comprador class, since the assassination of Lumumba, that Binza boy elite, that Binza group that the CIA created, is what has run the Congo to this very day. So when you have that type of leadership saying that, come and get the minerals and for security, it's not that surprising.
And that brought me back to the other points, because we're talking about minerals, and when there was that boycott movement, and I saw boycott movement, like boycotting Apple, and I saw the Congolese government jump on that bandwagon, right? And to me, I was like, why are they not going after? Because going after Apple, especially after our friends, I think it was the attorney
Terry
Collinsworth,
Collinsworth, yeah,
was leading that
international rights advocate,
international right advocate. They were leading that campaign or that lawsuit against tech companies, not just Apple, Dell, Microsoft, and then they eventually lost. And then so that the Congolese government was trying to do the exact same thing in Europe. And I was like, why are they doing that? Why are they not going after companies that are directly involved in the minerals, right? Like in selling the minerals to the smelters and stuff. And I think I mentioned that in one of our interview or conversation in the past with Julien Paluku, for example, who was the former government of
North
Kivu.
Kivu. He was former governor of North Kivu.
Former governor of North Kivu, but he was also he has been also a member of parliament since 2006. I don't know if he's currently a member of parliament, because I stopped
he's
paying
in the
attention to
government.
the election
He heads up one of the government divisions. He's currently in the government.
Yes, I think he's Minister of Trade, if I'm not mistaken. But people can correct me. And he could be seen a few years ago, and he took a photo with like at Tesla, right? And then Tesla is a company that is directly contracting that is directly in contract with Glencore for its cobalt supply, and it's actually one of the largest beneficiaries of Congo's minerals. So Julien Paluku was in Tesla taking photos, essentially celebrating partnership with Tesla, praising Tesla, while ignoring the fact that Tesla has admitted in court to pay $100 million in bribes to public officials and 27 million just for the Congo, and that's between 2007 and 2018.
You mean Glencore?
Yeah, Glencore. Yeah,
Glencore,
which is Tesla supplier. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Glencore, which is Tesla supplier, has admitted to paying $100 million in bribes. So Tesla has been buying, I would say, not conflict-free minerals, not minerals that most likely involve child labor, right?
Mhm.
So if the Congolese government really wanted to hold people accountable, they would have gone after. But
Right.
they can't really do that, because for the Congolese government to go after companies like Glencore involved in corruption, because who Glencore corrupted? Congolese officials, right? So
Right.
essentially, standing really against corruption, really demanding justice, will mean to essentially ending a system of corruption that they have been benefiting for decades, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to me,
And
it's really,
there's so many
yeah.
things that you're
To me,
saying
it's
there,
really
and
interesting.
yeah, good.
And just to finish, I actually get,
Hmm.
and I'm not even sure if that's confirmed information, that high official, like government officials, including spokesperson of the Congo, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they met recently with high officials of Tesla. Not sure if Elon Musk in person was there, but there has been talks between direct talks between the Congolese government and even Tesla. So to what degree, or to what, for what purpose, I think only the future will tell us.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things in there that you said to unpack, and I have to have to run, so we'll be able to engage in all of them. But you're right. Paluku is a minister, of foreign trade, and the a few things there that I think are particularly interesting, Gaitan. When you talked about corruption, and you talked about Glencore, right? Often people look at corruption and they say, "Oh, these African leaders are corrupt." But the companies, they're the ones supplying the money. They're part of that corrupt system as well, right? Like when the Department of
Yeah.
Justice, find this Wall Street hedge fund, Arch Ziff, they're now a sculpture for corrupt practices in the Congo, providing a slush fund for Dan Gertler to go and corrupt Congolese officials so that they can get mineral concessions, mining concessions for pennies on the dollar. The Department of Justice fined a Wall Street hedge fund for corruption in Africa, right? So the colonial prism, the white supremacist lens that we look through, uh, a lot of people look through, often points a finger on folks on the continent, but uh, corruption in Wall Street and the mining companies. This is just like, it's just that they get a slap on the hand. They get fined 450 million when their annual uh, revenues are in the billions. But this question of the Congolese government suing Apple, which the French courts, I believe, have thrown out just last week. It's like a very populist move, and we saw people coming asking and saying, oh, it's a good thing, isn't it? And I understand the eagerness to see companies held to account. But I think there are two things that I think are really important, and maybe when we have more time, we can really go into them. One is this whole question of boycott, and we've talked about it before. And folks are saying, well, let's boycott Apple. Um, let's buy refurbished phones. Let's stop vaping, and they say that as if it's going to make a difference, in the Congo. And there's a premise underlying it that boycotting Apple, and they didn't say Samsung, but maybe Samsung too and others, is going to make a difference on the ground. And a part of that appeal is to also let's have a certification scheme, so that
Mm.
let's hold these prescriptions. People saying let's hold these companies to account so they're not sourcing conflict minerals from the Congo. And really, if you just do like a cursory historical look, right, you'd automatically know to dismiss those as viable option for changing the conditions in the Congo. Boycotting Apple, calling for certification schemes will not change the conditions in the Congo, right? And we have history to document that. When it's kind of interesting. We see some young Congolese activists embracing today the conflict minerals scheme, certification scheme, which as Friends of the Congo, we were at the foundation of that. We had the initial meetings. We were in the meetings with the Microsofts and the Googles right here in Washington, D.C., at the conferences, speaking with the members of Congress when they formulated conflict minerals that was passed as an amendment, to the Dodd-Frank Act, major financial bill that was passed into law as a result of the housing meltdown in 2008, financial sector meltdown in 2008. The response from the U.S. government was to pass the Dodd-Frank Act. And as a part of that, activists and members of Congress attached an amendment to the Dodd-Frank Act. In fact, they attached two amendments to it, right? Section 1502, which is a Conflict Minerals Act, and Section 1504, which was a far more sensible amendment, we thought, that dealt with companies and holding them to account that, like the Zip, for example, if they have a transaction over $100,000 in Africa or the Congo, they'd have to declare it, right? It's an attempt to hold them to account for bribery and corruption. But
nothing happened.
But the Dodd-Frank 1502, which the conflict minerals come from, came out. It was developed in Washington. And to see Congolese today embracing it as a solution for the Congo is just really fascinating. But it was developed right here in Washington. It's not a Congolese prescription. It's a Washington prescription. And at the time, it was prescribed, and the activists that were leading it, in part, Gaetan, to basically ease the pressure on Rwanda. Because we were saying Rwanda is invading, occupying the Congo, right? And these other folks were saying, well, it's the minerals and the rebels. And if you have a clean mineral supply chain, it would end the violence. We're saying, no, if Rwanda stops supporting militia groups in the Congo, that would end the violence. That's what we say. Getting companies to go through this, declaring, publicly traded companies to declare whether or not they're sourcing minerals from conflict areas in the Congo is not going to end the violence, because the violence is being meted out by Rwandan soldiers. And they're in command and control of militia groups in the Congo that are controlling mines. So that's not going to solve the problem. If you want to solve the problem and do it immediately in terms of the violence, right, a particular type of violence, then you're going to put pressure on the Rwandan government. But there's certain activists in Washington didn't want that. They didn't want pressure on the Rwandan government. And the thing about it is, that's so fascinating. Not only did that conflict mineral scheme, right, not going to bring a solution, but it also set up Rwanda as a solution, because folks are saying Rwanda can now produce conflict-free minerals.
They can just certify it, and that's it.
They can certify it. And
Yeah.
the certification scheme was set up by this tin certification entity called ITSE, right?
ITSE,
International, I forget the full name of ITSE, but it's an International Tin Association. They were putting tags on minerals in the Congo and taking it across the border. They were coming from conflict areas and going out through Rwanda, right? So Rwanda is now set up as the good neighbor, right? Perpetrating war in the Congo, funneling minerals out that being certified in Rwanda and into the global market. And that's, that was the scheme, the conflict free. So when people say we need to certify, I said, well, you're basically certifying the looting of the Congo when you offer that as a prescription, right? And even the Government Accountability Office published a report this past summer in July, that said that conflict mineral thing, it doesn't work. It's not having an effect. And there have been studies published back in 2012 and 2013 that documented that. Because when the bill passed in the United States, President Joseph Kabila shut down the mining sector. Right? He imposed a virtual boycott on minerals. And do you know what that did, Gaetan? That caused a tremendous amount of pain for hundreds of thousands of Congolese, because you have up to 500,000 to 2 million Congolese that are involved in the small scale mining sector. And they support an additional 10 times their population for school fees and food and just a whole bunch. There's a whole socioeconomic setup. It's not ideal, right? But if you're going to crash that system, right, you better have an alternative at the same time, because those same people that you're thinking that you're going to save, when they don't have any resources now, they're going to get into illicit activities, which will then continue to perpetuate the violence in another way. So, anyways, I think I've probably gone too deep into it, but boycotting Apple certification scheme, we should just do a show on that where that's not the answer.
We should.
The Congolese are pursuing resource sovereignty. That means the government, instead of suing Apple, they should be looking to capture the value locally, acquire more full ownership of their resources, not dissimilar from what Indonesia is doing with its nickel sector, where it says that none of this thing is leaving this country without value being added locally. And you know, when Indonesia did that, you know what the European Union did? They sued them at the World Trade Organization. They're saying, like, you need to let your nickel get out. You know, you can't put a ban on your nickel. We need your raw nickel, right?
Yeah.
So in any case,
and that's what you talk about in the report with Public Citizen. I mean, that's literally how those institutions that were created. I think during Mobutu era, literally that was to sanction Africans for trying to not really nationalize, because I feel like some people are really allergic to that, but making sure that the minerals, that African minerals, belong to Africans. So any attempt to take that path or that route will mean that those organizations will go to other institution and just sue the government. And I think we need to have a specific a session on that report, because I feel like Friends of the Congo and Public Citizen lay out a bunch of recommendations that should be learned by all activists, Congolese activists, human rights activists, environmental activists, and even those who are calling for boycott, and see how that recommendation or those recommendations we really work to improve the conditions, not just of the Congolese, like in the mind, but also of Congolese people in general.
The masses, absolutely. And you know, I got to run, but I'll just leave you this before I head out. You got to ask yourself one question. I would encourage activists and just people across the board. Is boycotting Apple going to lead to resource sovereignty for the Congo? Is a mineral certification scheme going to lead to resource sovereignty for the Congo and for Africa? And I'll give a hint to the answer. Look at the Sahel states. See what kind of boycotts and certification schemes that those governments are proposing. And the answer will lie therein. I gotta run. I know you gotta talk about Canada, Germany, Arsenal coming out with statements, and fans in Germany, demonstrating, saying they don't want, their blood on their football team's hands. So look forward to coming back and seeing you, seeing what you share with
always a pleasure to talk. So I'll catch you later.
Okay, man. All right. Be well. Peace.
Peace. Folks, that was Maurice Carney, the executive director of Friends of the Congo, breaking down essentially not just the recommendation of the report that was written by Public Citizen and Friends of the Congo, the deadly cost of cobalt mining in the Congo. Very, very, very fascinating, especially for those who are trying to understand what's going on. And I think I'm always misunderstood. The reason why I was personally part of that campaign, because it was a really good tool to raise awareness. And I've always said that the Congo is really a particular case. The minimum wage in the Congo is, I think, $0.6 a day. $5 a day, $0.6 an hour, I believe. And in the US, the federal minimum wage is like $7. So the context is different, right? That's when you boycott something in the US, you have alternative. You can go and you have that luxury, right? That um, privilege of making choices. I have a friend when she talks about retiring, she doesn't even use retiring. She said that we have a choice now. Uh, in Congo, people don't have choices. Yeah, we most of the time we don't have choices. So when we talk about boycotting stuff like phones and then see or knowing how many people, because I did not know that until I had a conversation with some folks on the ground and then discussion internally to realize how that was actually going to affect. So I decided to pivot my not just my argument, but the entire struggle around that. Like not just boycott. Yes, if people want to buy, keep the phones, they should be doing that. Like I come from a family or a culture where we reuse. We don't necessarily recycle, but we do reuse, right? And we do have hand down. Like you, we don't tend we fix stuff, we reuse them, and we don't need them, we pass it to our siblings. I grew up like that as Congolese, and like any Congolese will tell you that that's what we do, right? So I'm always encouraging folks not to fall into the trap of of consuming, right? Like just don't buy just because it is time of the year to buy, right? Buy because you need it. So I'm always encouraging people to make those type of choices. But when it comes to activism, when it comes to particularly activism around the Congo, what must be done to better the condition of the Congolese people, you need to, we need to think broadly if this action is actually going to be effective. It's a great tool to raise awareness because people are going to start talking about Apple. People are going to start talking about these schemes, as Brother Maurice mentioned, and how, despite the Dodd-Frank Act, I think that passed in 2010, particularly around the Congo in 2010, but how, you know, we're in 2025 today, things has not gone better, right? We have seen Rwanda continuing to fund militia groups. We have seen warlords growing. If you want to become a general today, just prop up your militia groups, become a warlord, and then you'll be rewarded. No accountability at all. That has been to stop the war, to stop the killing. So anyways, back to our conversation. We're talking about the Kivus and the siege, and the news of the day, and I posted it on X, is that Germany announced that they were going to apply sanctions. So we have the list of nations that so far from the West, I have to be precise, that have announced that they will be implementing sanctions either on Rwanda itself or on Rwandan officials due to its involvement in the invasion of the Congo. Because it's not, again, word matter, it's not a ethnic conflict, it is not a rebellion, it is an invasion, it is an occupation. So one, we have the United States, the U.S. Department of Treasury and Office of Foreign Asset Control (OFAC) imposed sanctions on James Kabarebe, who is the current Rwandan Minister of State and then Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of regional integration and cooperation. James Kabarebe, like we said earlier, has been involved in the Congo from day one, and multiple reports from 1997 report from the Human Rights Watch, from other reports from the United Nation. They presented, because he presented himself, James Kabarebe presented himself as someone from the Congo originally. He talked about his grandparents allegedly born in Ruchuru, I believe. Um, as a way to justify why he was holding the position of the Congolese Army Chief of Staff between, I think, 1996 and 1997. And that was before he got kicked out when president at the time that was backed by Rwanda, Laurent Desire Kabila, decided that all Rwandan troops should go home. He was among the people who packed the stuff and went back to Rwanda. So there was an arrest warrant against him. Um, I think it was in 2008. And because of pressure, because of connection and how the US was shielding essentially, they decided to withdraw that one arrest. So fast forward, he has been shielded by the US, but they decided, I think it was February, the end of February, 22nd or 25th, they decided to finally sanction him. We have the United Kingdom that suspended financial aid and military training assistance to Rwanda. They cited concern over Rwanda alleged support for M23. We have the European Union a little bit divided on what to do essentially or exactly against Rwanda, because we have Luxembourg, a very rich country, small country, very rich and expensive, that has been essentially blocking any specific or targeted sanction against Rwanda. But they have called for an end to a mineral agreement with Rwanda due to its alleged links to the conflict in the Congo. We have Canada. Listen, I've always said that if you are able to piss Canada, then something is wrong with you. Canadians are known to be who they are, very peaceful, nice people. And Canada, French came back, Canada announced that it will suspend the issuance of permits of export of controlled goods and technology to Rwanda and halt new government-to-government business and trade missions. And then we also have Belgium that suspended the development cooperation with Rwanda over its supports for M23 and is pushing the EU to suspend its mineral trade agreement with Rwanda. Again, citing the exact same thing, the role of Rwanda in fueling the conflict. And then as of this morning, Germany suspended new financial commitment to Rwanda due to allegation of Rwanda support to the M23. So the pressure keeps growing, and we should not stop there. We should continue to apply this pressure. We should continue to be louder, right? To make noise and essentially demand more peace, right? That demands a peaceful Congo, a just Congo. When we talk about the energy transition, we need to advocate more for a just transition, that the transition to EV batteries and renewable energy cannot be done at the expense of any human being around the world. And here I'm talking about Congolese people who are being forced to dig under horrible working conditions, right? People can be killed and there will be no benefit, there will be no accountability. There is, in terms of like working rights, they have absolutely zero working rights. And companies that are profiting or they are right now dealing in the Congo, they have that power. Apple has that power. Tesla has that power to demand from the Congolese government, to demand from Rwanda that there is justice, that human lives, workers' rights are being respected, right? So it's very important for us to continue to apply that pressure, to continue to speak up, to continue to not be silent, right? That our activism doesn't stop in our own comforts, not because we got what we wanted, that said we need to be silent. No, we need to continue, right? And when it comes to Rwanda, when it comes to the Congo, again, our struggle should even go beyond Rwanda. As Brother Maurice mentioned, it's also this elite right now in the Congo that has captured any way for Congolese people to even resist. The FRDC did hire mercenaries, right? While the Congolese military were paid $100, less than $100. It's always good to mention, because when we talk about justice, we need to have fairness in what we're saying, and we need to be also consistent with our word. We cannot use uh, the UN report to only talk about Rwanda when it fits us, when it benefits us. I was among the people that were talking against or raising awareness about what happened to civilians in 2023 when they were protesting against the UN peacekeeping troops in Kivu, and mentioning that how the presence of those peacekeepers for the past 20 years has never brought peace. They protested. They were shot by some peacekeepers that were actually found. There was videos of the UN exerting some violence, but also the one that really shocked everyone was when we saw the Republican Guards shooting, killing over 100 civilians in the Congo, just because they were saying out loud what was clear, that the UN has been uh, uh, incompetent. They have been uh, not able to impose peace in the region. And a few months later, if not um, uh, maybe a year later, we saw that the UN were forced by the Congolese government, not really forced because there was like an agreement, but they were literally forced or told to move out of the Kivu, and that's why I will say, or I will argue, that it was easier for M23, of course, backed by Rwanda heavily, to be able to take Goma, to be able to take all these territories. So we need to be consistent with our words. We need to be truthful to our word, to our struggle, to our activism. And while they are using lies to justify the crimes, we are just saying that no lies should be taken as truth, right? That no lies should go unchallenged. That we needs to challenge all those lies. When they said that there are 10,000 FDLR troops in the Congo, when they're saying that there are that the Congolese government is collaborating with FDLR, to that I said, because there are facts, there are evidence to support what I'm saying, that yes, it is true that the Congolese government has been working alongside the FDLR, but that's only impartial, that's only incomplete, because we need to tell the full story. The full story is, in 30 years that we have been, that the Congolese people have been victim of aggression, um, that we have seen time and times opportunities for the Congolese government to work with the Rwanda military, with the Rwanda government, to extract that Rwanda militia groups, because the FDLR, which was created in 2000, is first and foremost a Rwanda militia groups that is targeting primarily Congolese civilians. And even under current President Tshisekedi, there was also operations against the FDLR that actually ended up killing one of the top, I would say, generals, the FDLR. Um, and even when you look at, I mentioned Sultani Makenga earlier, who in 2012, when he decided to leave the Congolese army, he left the Congolese army officially. That's the UN report that talks about that. He left the Congolese army because he refused to be involved in an operation against the FDLR. 2012. And after he left the FDLR, after he left the Congolese army, he joined what Bosco Tanganda, who's currently jailed for 30 years, he joined what's now called the M23, Mouvement du 23 Mars. He joined, and one of the things that M23 has been saying for over decades now is that they are fighting against FDLR, right? That the FDLR is a threat to their existence. That's what the spokesperson says. That's what Even the Rwandan government is saying that's what Sultani Makenga is saying. But the dude refused to be involved in an operation against the FDLR in 2012. And we also found out decades after that the same Sultani Makenga is still part of the M23, which, by the way, in 2012, it was established that the chain of command was going all the way to Rwanda, to the Minister of Defense that was, and the person that was that had that position, that role was James Kabarebe, sanctioned by the US. And that's really good information for y'all to know. So Sultani Makenga today is still leading the M23. They are still claiming that they're fighting the FDLR, even claiming that they have handed 14 FDLR members to or combatant to the Rwanda government. But at the same time, in 2023, we learned that the M23, alongside the RDF, because it is established that the RDF has boots on the ground in the Congo, that they use up to 250 FDLR combatants. And they were all taking orders from the Rwandan government, from the RDF, from particularly the Rwanda intelligence, the Rwanda department, the Rwanda, I'm trying to get the name, the Rwanda Defense Intelligence Department, DID. That's written, black on white in a UN report. So for me, when I hear this FDLR game, I'm saying that this game of saying that we are invading a country, which is a violation of international law, that we are invading a country to protect ourselves from the FDLR, the same group that you are using over and over again to plunder the Congo, to occupy the Congo, to create chaos, to justify why you will enter. I think that we need to be able to use this fact, challenge those lies, and says that the game has been rigged from the start from Congolese people. So we need to continue to ask for pressure. I think it's necessary, but we also need to demand justice. And on that note, I'm gonna leave you guys. But I'm gonna call on y'all to continue to support, continue to make noise. There is the fundraiser that we are doing, because the folks, our families that we have been to moved out of Goma, and building for them, and also sending letters to your senators. If you're in the US, visit freecongo.org. If you are in the UK or in Europe, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, contact our partner, Congo Youth, Congo Action Youth Platform, GenoCost, to how you can, so that they can help you and tell you how you can also contact your member of parliament, the people that are supposed to represent you, to speak on your behalf, and be clear, be firm, that you do not want to tax dollars to go and support the war, any war, the war in the Congo, or any war around the world. So thank you again, y'all, for listening, and I will catch you later. Thanks.